I see that your eyes are the only sort of light that I need to brighten my sky, because the universe is perfect when it's right in your eyes. When you're gone, energy's at stake. The world is standing still with no memories to make. So the moon's behind your pupils is where I begin to find galaxies hidden on your porcelain skin. You know that this space is pulling me in. Yeah, you know that this space is pulling me in.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to That Atheist Show. I'm Preston, That Atheist Dude, and tonight we have with us Gregory Michael Davis. Thank you for joining us tonight. I forgot to even ask, what do you go by, Greg or Mike?
It's funny. When I was growing up, I went by Mike because my father's name was Gregory. He was Gregory James Davis, and I was Gregory Michael Davis. So to distinguish the two, I always went by actually Mikey. And then I grew up, and I was like, I think 24 years old, and just decided that Greg suited me better. So at this juncture, Greg works. I mean, we'll see. We'll see
That's
what I'm going by
actually
later on down the road.
that's really funny though, because my first name is actually Gilbert, and my dad's name is also Gilbert. And to distinguish, I always went by my middle name, which is Preston, and I still go by Preston. I just don't think Gilbert suits me.
Well, Preston is a hell of a lot better than Mikey.
That's
Like, I mean, my
funny.
parents still call me Mikey, but I'm a 6'3" man with a burly beard.
The person that
Mikey
introduced
just,
us calls you Mikey, I know.
Yeah. She met me prior to the great rebranding of 2012.
That's funny. Great. So, all right, we have you on here. The reason we have you on here is because you've recently made some awesome music, haven't you?
I guess that's subjective. I mean, I think so.
I think. Well, that's what was playing actually on the intro for anybody who was watching for that.
So I've been a musician for quite some time. I started out kind of just as a rapper because when I was growing up, that was the rebellious thing to do. My parents were very much into 60s, 70s, 80s rock, and then whatever was playing on like the local alternative station at the time. And for me, the easiest way to rebel was to listen to hip hop because in the mid 90s, such a small portion of the population listened to hip hop, and certainly my parents weren't a percentage of that population. So I started writing like hip hop tunes when I was a lot younger. And then as I aged, I started to gather a more stern appreciation for the music that my parents listened to. And eventually started teaching myself how to play instruments, how to read music, took vocal lessons that really didn't do much because, I don't know, still not a great singer, but I still try to do, different things. So I still very much do hip hop, but at the same exact time, I like to incorporate really any element that intrigues me at the time.
That's awesome. Very cool. Now you also have a background in science, don't you?
I do.
And,
Um,
you've studied physics, is that correct?
yeah, yes. Astrophysics is my forte. Orbital mechanics is my emphasis. At this point, I'm starting to feel like Batman, where I just keep retelling my origin story because people are intrigued by it. But basically, what happened was um, I grew up as
Can you hold your mic away
your
a little bit?
yeah I grew up as your standard loudmouth. I was very much loquacious. I was very much the class clown, and I was very much a pathological liar, like very, very young in my life. I remember I told my third grade teacher that I couldn't complete my homework because my parents died in a volcano,
Oh, wow.
and there's not any volcanoes in Las Vegas. But um,
There we go.
we're back on.
Yeah.
All right, so I started taking mathematics very seriously around 12 years old, incorporating that keen sense of pattern recognition and eventually applying it to, algebra, calculus, geometry, trigonometry, etc. So because of that, I developed an intrigue for physics, but found Well, actually, I found mathematics limiting because I always thought, that 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4, whereas English or storytelling, mythology, stuff of that nature, there was more mutability. Things fluctuated, and you can use these blocks to build something different each and every time. But then I got acquainted with physics, and because of that relationship with physics, I no longer felt limited by mathematics. And I kind of kept it under wraps for a really long time because being a physics nerd wasn't hip hop. If you know what I mean, it was very hard to be like, hey guys, take me seriously as a rapper. I'm gonna go take a physics class now. So
I mean, I can make for some ill verses though.
well, it's funny. When I was 12, my grandma bought me a book called "The Universe in a Nutshell" by Stephen Hawking, and it was actually like a dual pack. I got "The Universe in a Nutshell" and "A Brief History of Time," both by Stephen Hawking. And one of the things I was really excited about was writing like a physics song. And I got like
Oh
maybe
yeah.
like 8 to 12 measures into it and like discussed Copernicus and stuff, and then really did nothing with it. But when I was 18, 19, 20 years old and trying to make a living off of music, it was easier for me to blend in with the herd than try to distinguish myself from my predecessors, my colleagues, and the people that surrounded me. So I was very, very much quiet about my mathematics and physics background. And that really changed actually recently. I mean, I'll be 28 this year, and really nobody knew that I had this affinity for physics, astronomy, mathematics, probably until 25 years old. So it's still pretty brand new as far as the branding is concerned.
That's awesome. Now, what have you done since then? You were just telling me that you've been asked to take part in Sony. Go ahead.
Oh, so the Sunday thing is actually a really old story. Um, we were discussing video games and how I know very, very little about video games. Well, in 2011, um, I was trying to work with as many musicians as possible to kind of get my name out there. And I got an email about this project that Sony was putting capital and their name behind, and it was going to be released on iTunes. I think it was like some sort of anniversary, but that could be completely wrong. And it was about Final Fantasy VII. Now, I know that there's a huge cult following behind Final Fantasy VII, but truth be told, I've never played the game. So when they asked me to do it and presented me with a paycheck, of course, I agreed to it, but I didn't really know anything about it. So I was dating this girl at the time, and her brother was a big video game fan. So I basically called him up and was like, hey, bud, I need you to come over for a little bit. And he was basically like my human surrogate of Wikipedia. And I just asked him questions about Final Fantasy VII and like took notes, like in class. He basically gave me like, it was it was short of a PowerPoint presentation, but aside from that, it was basically like a college course in Final Fantasy VII. And I ended up writing a whole entire verse. And not to this day, but back when I was still going under my old moniker, I would have people message me on Facebook or get emails or tweets or what have you about people mentioning this verse that I did. And I have no idea, I know nothing about Final Fantasy VII to this day. I've never played it because I just don't play video games that often. Mega Man X is the extent of my knowledge in video games, and God of War because I'm a fan of Greek mythology. So I played God of War.
Which one? The first one?
I think I played the first three. I think they released the fourth one that I bought, but I never actually played.
Yeah, the fourth one, it's not like called God of War 4. It's one of the side stories.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I saw somebody post on Facebook the other day that they're coming out with something with his child or something. I didn't actually watch,
That's coming out soon.
so I might actually have to get a PS4 now. I've been slumming it on the PS3 because it serves my purposes, but I may need to
I switched over to
play God of War,
PC just
whatever.
because my Xbox was sitting there collecting dust while I was playing PC games. I just tossed it away. I traded it in.
I think the last PC game I played was like NBA Live '99.
Old school.
Like 17 years ago. I remember it had like Antoine Walker on the cover. This is back when I liked basketball. And you used to be able to create your own characters, but there was like no limit on how tall the guy could be. So I like guys that were like 6'9".
That's
I had like
awesome.
a team of 5 created characters that were
Giants.
Yeah, all over 7 foot tall.
Oh,
It
and
was
Shaq.
fantastic. Yeah.
Now, I was told actually to ask you what you think about the fusion of music and physics, I think,
Um,
of how they relate to each other.
so I think that I'm going to go ahead and make that a tad bit broader, just for the sake of like like Occam's razoring it. Um, Science and music in general have a very um, long history, a historic relationship, if you
It might
will.
have been it was science and music, not physics.
Okay, so I've spoken about this on a few different occasions. I did the Las Vegas Science and Technology Festival where I was asked to speak on this subject. So that was an hour-long speech. I'm going to go ahead and compact that. But basically, what it boils down to is dating as far back as Greek times. There is a mathematician and philosopher known as Pythagoras. Very, very famous name. Basically, your Mount Rushmore
Right.
of mathematics. Everybody knows him for the Pythagorean theorem. But he is also responsible for equating musical tones to the laws of nature. The story has it that he walked by a blacksmith hammering an anvil, and he heard the tones and decided that since the tones were in direct relation to the weight of the hammer, the velocity in which the hammer was striking the anvil, and the density of the anvil, since the tones were related to that, the tones were mathematical, and thereby mathematical part of the mathematical laws of nature.
It makes a lot of
Well,
sense, actually.
yeah, I mean, he's also known for string instruments. So for those who don't know,
Yeah, even
piano.
when you think about when somebody hits a drum, the different speed of how they're going to beat that drum,
Yeah,
like
I mean,
affects the sound.
exactly. Not just that, but also where you hit it. So if you
Exactly,
think about
and
it,
the tightness of the drum itself, all of that.
yeah. So density, weight, velocity, those are all numbers. Um,
Absolutely.
so he also came up with strings for your guitar, for your mandolin, for your ukulele, even pianos
They
operate off
are
of
almost
strings.
always in a triangle, aren't they?
Well, not just that, but he also decided that the girth, the length, where you put your fingers, depends on the tone that you get.
Right.
So again, those related to mathematics, width, girth.
So that's
By
that's how
putting your
you're
finger,
able to make music notes, basically.
exactly. So a lot of people, when I was a lot younger, I heard the phrase "rhythm is basically math," and I didn't really know what that meant until I actually got into
That makes
music theory
sense.
and realized that they were very, very, firmly connected. There's an intrinsic link between the two of them.
Yeah, beats, rhythms of 2/4s and 4/4s and all that stuff.
Exactly.
That's what we know
Time,
now, at least.
yeah, time signatures,
Yeah, that's what
BPMs.
I
I
meant
mean,
to say. Time signatures.
yeah,
I'm a huge fan of metal, and one of the newer styles of metal that have come out recently. It's been about 10 years, probably a little bit more than that. Um, I mean, really, it's been 20 years, but it's called gent, and basically, the characteristic that allows you to call it gent, because it's simply a style, it's not a genre,
okay,
is that the band will use obscure time signatures, like really crazy shit, to where you're sitting there and you're like, how the fuck are they sitting here playing this on a drum kit, like going with their hands doing completely different time signatures, like 618 and all kinds of crazy shit. And that's one of the signature things. And like whenever I hear these bands, because I listen to it so often, and I'm used to the screaming and all that stuff, I'm always just amazed at how they're able to keep these rhythms for so long, like throughout a
right,
song. Because I go out and see them live. That's one of the reasons I have all the band shirts that I have, is when I see them live, I buy the merch, and I'll see them sit there and fucking do these time signatures, even on guitar, even on bass. I'm seeing their fingers and I'm seeing how they're doing it. I'm just like, wow, like
right.
you can't even follow them as a crowd, but you're sitting there, headbanging as much as you can. But when you're watching their fingers just go crazy on these time signatures, you're like, they're holding this rhythm, and it's all math. All of it is math.
Right. So I went to a concert a few weeks ago and took a friend with me. name was Jennifer, and we were just kind of talking about time signatures in general, and how that if you find anything that isn't 4/4, to the untrained listener, it almost feels as though the musician is the one making the mistake. So if you
Yes.
hear something like 5/4 and you're trying to bob your head, or you're trying to clap on 2 and 4 and you can't because that's not the time signature, you're almost like, man,
Right.
this guy needs to be a better musician. He's off beat.
Exactly. And what happens with these gent bands is the whole band is following the same off time signature. So instead of it sounding like it's a mistake, it sounds like you're making a mistake by headbanging wrong.
Right.
It's like these guys are just all to it. Like so, and the other characteristic about Jen is it's very, very, very tight. Like the strums are extremely fucking tight. So that's how they're able to hold all these time signatures by just with speed and awesome riffage and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of bands that do it now, but
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why that probably won't ever enter mainstream as far as the general
people
population
can't
is
handle
concerned.
it.
Exactly, it's just so weird.
Literally.
It's a different thing. I mean, I can maybe think of one like pop. I mean, I don't listen to a lot of pop music, but I can think of like one pop song that's made it, big in the last few years. That isn't a 4/4,
Yeah.
and that's that one MGMT song, "Electric Feel."
There is a song called Four Chords that it plays the same four chords throughout 5 minutes or something like that, but it plays the lyrics of every pop song for the past like 40, 50 years. And it follows the same four chords for all the songs. It's a really great video.
Well, I mean, I think
Really
that's
check that out.
that's generalizing a little bit too much. I mean, obviously, you're going to find things.
No,
I mean,
it
you
goes
can't play
it
the
goes
same
through
four.
the songs that do follow.
Yeah, I mean, you can't play the same 4 chords for songs that don't fit that key. But pop music traditionally, for the most part, is in the key of C. So it's basically that if you look at a piano and you play nothing but your white keys, you're in the key of C.
Right.
Um, so it's just so much easier as a up and coming musician to play songs in the key of C. It's also so much easier as a listener to enjoy songs in the key of C because you're more conditioned to hearing it. And there's obviously
You've already
nothing
heard it a
wrong.
million times.
Yeah, there's obviously nothing wrong with different time signatures, with different keys. For example, one of my favorite songs to come out in the last 5 or so years is a Lumineer song called Morning Song, and that's definitely not in 4/4. And then there's a Sufjan Stevens song that came out in 2005 that goes from 5/4 to 4/4. So I mean, it does happen, but as far as like stuff that you're going to hear on the radio, most
It's gonna
people
stay around there.
most people don't want to be in their car feel like they're listening to a waltz,
Right.
which is 3/4 time signature. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. It just feels weird.
Or metals
So
and 10 SAS time signatures that are just going insane all over the place.
it's funny. I don't.
You don't
I
wanna listen to
would
that?
like if I ran over a metal band, I wouldn't know it. Like I just don't know anything about metal music. And again, it's because of the progression that I went through as a child from being a hip hop head to very much. I listen to indie rock and indie folk. That's what I listen to nowadays.
I
Even
went
though
from hip hop to from like Fat Joe to Korn and Limp Bizkit when I was about 6, 7 years old. And it
I
really did start there though, and then it turned into Linkin Park, Slipknot, Anthrax, and then went into what it is now, which I can't even listen to those bands anymore. Really, they're too weak for me. So, not weak, but
sure.
not as heavy as I like.
I think I went from like my first favorite rapper was Coolio, and that was like 95,
Oh
96.
man, I remember that shit.
And then I went to Outkast. Loved Outkast.
Oh, yeah.
In '98, I was being babysat. I was like 10 years old.
Remember
And Rosa
TRL?
Parks.
I used to watch TRL.
I never watched TRL. I never was a big fan of TV. The only TV I ever really watched growing up was The Fresh Prince
Oh yeah.
because my family's from Philadelphia, and I really liked Smart Guy because it was like this
Yes.
nerdy kid who was in high school.
I
and,
forgot
who was-
about that shit.
The Smart Guy was the best. And I remember I used to come home from school, and it was like Smart Guy at 6 o'clock, and I think Boy Meets World at 7, or
Oh, yeah,
vice
Boy
versa.
Meets
And
World,
that
that was a great show too. They have Girl Meets World now.
yeah. I went ahead and passed on that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
I'm just not familiar with modern television, or like we mentioned earlier, video games. I wish I had more time for it, but a lot of the time I don't because music for the most part is a full-time job. I mean, I'm constantly staying busy. And when I'm not doing music, I'm, doing something mathematics or science related. So it's very, very hard to include pop culture in my lifestyle, which is fine though, because I think the alternative would be not really doing anything. So I guess it's better to be busy than to not do much.
What are some of the favorite things that you've done so far, science related?
Um, I had an interview that was basically like I'm not entirely sure what the word for it is, but when they basically bring you in to do a job and that's your interview. I did that with a company back in February, and I got to deal with basically land to air orbital mechanics, and that was really, really fun.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
I signed a non-disclosure agreement with it, so I can't really get into some of the minutia behind it. But it was really, really, really fun, and I've been out of work for about 5 months at that point, just doing music. So I went in and was like immediately uncomfortable because I was like, man, these guys are way smarter than I am. Why am I here? But after it's kind of like when you jump into a pool. It's more difficult when you go from ankles to shin,
Right.
and then your knees and it gets cold going up. But if you just dive in, you're fine.
Right.
So after a while, things went a lot better, and my dog is losing his mind. Um, hey, calm down, Claude. So I did that, and then I really do like anything that I get to, anything I do that gets to be used as a teaching mechanism. I really like when I get to speak at schools. I really like when I get to do lectures, be it at schools or at conventions, or even the occasional podcast that I get invited on. I really, really enjoy doing that because I think that one of the things about science is that it's not fun for the most part. A lot of people want to act like they're obsessed with science, but really all they like to do is share memes.
Yeah.
Um, but the job of those memes is to
Communicate.
pique your interest.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to approach, science in a mimetic way. Try to do things that keep people entertained. I remember, oh, a long time ago, I was probably a year ago at this point, maybe longer. I was talking to this very, very awesome girl, and she liked jalapeno pizza, and I too liked jalapeno pizza. So I was bored one day at work, and I decided that I was going to do the arithmetic required to see how long it would take to cook a jalapeno pizza on Venus. Now, granted, that pizza is going to taste terrible
On
because
Venus?
of, oh yeah, absolutely, because of the sulfur in the air. But I had to account for that, the atmosphere. I had to account for the atmospheric pressure. I had to account for the temperature, the ingredients, the dough, and all that stuff. So I spent like 5 to 10 minutes doing that. But for me, it was fun because it was a fun way of introducing mathematics to this girl I was speaking to, because I guess doing it in a way that she can relate to, which is pizza.
Yeah.
But then also turning simple things like E equals MC squared. I wrote an article that was published based on E equals MC squared about how E equals MC squared is kind of like the prom queen of the mathematics community. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows E equals MC squared, but not a lot of people know what it actually does.
Not many people understand it.
No, but I mean, it's not the simplest thing to understand.
Right.
But then also telling the story of E equals MC squared through the Hulk. If you look at the Hulk gains mass as he transmutates. Don't make me angry. You're not going to like me when I'm angry. The guy doesn't just turn green. He gets significantly larger. So if he's going to get significantly larger, two options remain. And that is either he is adding mass, which means that his atoms are basically firing at the speed of light times the speed of light. And atoms are basically coming out of thin air like magic. And he's getting larger. Well, and getting more dense. However, if he's getting larger but not adding density, at that point he's basically just like one of those flailing arm guys at a car, you know,
Right.
lot.
It wouldn't have any strength to it.
No, I mean he could get bigger, but you'd be able to push him over
Exactly.
like a
Yeah,
small,
it wouldn't be as strong. Yeah.
yeah, small breeze would knock over the Hulk. So I think that when you get to do stuff that way, when you get to make it fun, when you get to tell these anecdotes in a way that people find relatable and find entertaining, I think for me that is my greatest joy as far as things that I get to do in the science and mathematics community. Just because at that point, you know, people like what you're saying, and then they have follow-up questions,
Yeah.
and then the follow-up questions can get the follow-up answers can get progressively less anecdotal. They can get more true to the source
Objective.
material.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get more objective. They can get more true to the source material, and then they're already hooked from the funny version of it. Well, now they're interested in the actual meat of what it is you were discussing. So I think it's a lot easier to have a mimetic approach to science, not in the sense that people are just going to post a meme and that be the extent of it, but at least to, you know, throw the worm out there and hope you get them hooked.
Absolutely. I was just reading an article the other day about the problems with science. They asked a bunch of scientists what they think the problems of modern science are. And one of the things that came up with science communication was just there's not enough ability to make people, or there's not enough people going out there trying to make sure people understand what is being researched and what is being, discovered, so that people are able to completely misunderstand it and then put their own subjective ideas into it, like vaccines causing autism and things like that.
Well, sure. There's an old, I'm not entirely sure what his doctorate was in, but his name is Dr. Leonard Orr, and basically what he came up with was that the mind operates in segmented fashion. You have two different halves. You have the thinker versus the prover. And the thinker history shows, can essentially think up anything. And the prover is going to rearrange whatever information is available to support the thinker's hypothesis. And without conveying information in a very, very strict and concise fashion, you leave things open to interpretation. I don't necessarily think that there's a lack of people out there who are trying to convey these messages, but I think there is a lack of, I think it's kind of like a carbon dating is like a full circle. So I'm going to use that as an example. There's people who do want to digest scientific information, but not enough to where the media is going to report it. And not enough and since the media is not reporting it, the demand isn't there because they're not really accustomed to it. So people can see a picture on Facebook or Twitter or read a really, really brief article. Let me tell you something. Anything that happens in the science community cannot be, scaled down to a couple page article. It just can't happen. You're losing so much of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you can read these articles all day, but if you're not doing your own research, you're not getting anywhere with it. So since we're not reporting it, the demand for the reporting isn't there. And since we're not reporting it, the demand isn't increasing. But there are people, look at Stephen Hawking. Again, I was a 12-year-old reading his books, and I didn't understand it all. But for me, he was my gateway drug.
Right.
And now you have people like Kip Thorne, who was behind some of the physics in Interstellar. They had to take a liberal approach for the sake of Hollywood, but he did some cool things that intrigued people. Neil deGrasse Tyson, say what you want about the guy. I know some people consider him to be like a figure that is ostracized in some ways because he's very, 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 very pro science, but we need people like that.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
But we
it's
also
getting better, kind of.
Yeah, it is getting better. It is getting better, but we also need the demand. So really, the thing is, if people
imagine if the news reported as much science as they did anything else, like Kardashians, at least.
Well, yeah, but if you remember, it usually takes something. It usually takes a monumental achievement, or it takes a monumental scare. So
Right.
if you look at in the 60s, science was high. Why
Cold
was
War.
science high? Because we just put a man on the moon.
Or that, yeah.
And then you also scared people because we saw in the 40s, we saw what happened in Japan. Well, shit, now Russia's stockpiling.
Right.
So, you either need a large scare or a large triumph. And that's why so many people, you never hear people going to bat for Pluto outside of the United States. Why? The reason why is because it's the only quote unquote planet. By the way, it's not a planet, but it's the only
Right.
planet that we discovered. So people have this relationship with Pluto that is nonsensical because it is an American triumph.
Right.
So in this, day and age of nationalism is running rampant in Europe, and obviously in small circles, maybe even larger circles than I'm aware of, in the United States, Canada, and such. If you have those triumphs, you're going to get the demand. The problem with that is in the United States, we don't necessarily lift our triumphant scientists up. So if you
Not
look
as
at
much as anything else, yeah.
and not as much as other states.
Right.
If you look at a lot of like currency, for example, in other countries, some of them have scientists on it, and some of their
I
emblems
didn't know that.
are science related. If you look at our currency, the closest thing we have to a scientist is Benjamin Franklin. And that's not to say that I'm diminishing anything that he accomplished, because I'm not. But I think it's safe to say that people consider put Benjamin Franklin on our currency more for patriotic
Yeah.
and
For him being the
founding
president.
fathers as reasons
Or
than
he wasn't president, yeah.
no, he wasn't a president, but we're not advertising him on our currency because of his scientific achievements. So maybe I saw people discussing it, but I take hiatuses from social media, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that at least it was a campaign to get Harriet Tubman on like the $20
Yeah.
bill or the $10 bill. Did that actually end up going through?
I don't think so yet. I don't think it's been decided. I'm not sure really at all though.
Okay, so that is a step in the right direction because you're not treating somebody as an infallible father figure. So maybe if we could start getting people to take, the sciences serious in the political world,
Yeah,
people
especially
crave it a little more.
especially in the political world where laws are made, people are just ignoring shit.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I have no problem with religion or anything of that nature because you know what? There was a time where I wanted to major in theology. I wanted to have an emphasis on the classics like Greek mythology. But at some point, we have to acknowledge the fact that evolution isn't a theory. It's something you could very much see happening on a day-to-day basis. Stuff like that needs to be considered a law. And stuff like the Bible needs to be out of the science class. And if you want to teach stuff like the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, make that its own separate class. And then let us have our classes where we're teaching
And teach
evolution.
it objectively.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't even necessarily need to teach it objectively. If you're going to make it an elective, people are going to go in there and with their preconceived notions anyways. But at the end of the day, things should be critiqued. Nothing should, everything that you ask.
Nothing should be protected
questioned. Exactly.
from criticism. Nothing should be censored.
Agreed. And I think,
Everything should be out there so that it can be challenged. And the only cure for a fallacious argument is a better argument, not censorship.
right.
That's what Carl Sagan said.
Yeah. And one of the issues that I'm realizing nowadays is that, and obviously this is a small extreme circles. I don't want to generalize anybody because that would be unscientific of me, but there's a lot of people who, if you critique anything, you're seen as a bigot. And I'm not just speaking about left, but also people on the right.
Yeah.
I mean, from both extreme political stances. If you critique the Bible, you're trying to, undermine God. Well, if
Yeah.
you critique what's going on on the liberal scale, then you're seen as a bigot. But at the end of the day, we should ask questions. And the reason why we should, the reason why we should ask those questions is because that's how you learn. If somebody walks up to you and asks a question about transgender, but they do it in a way that is respectful. If it's a legitimate question,
Right.
if they question things, don't call them a bigot. Um, don't
Shame them for
undermine
not
their,
knowing.
don't undermine their ability and desire to learn. Answer those questions. Construct your argument carefully.
Yep.
Do it in a way where people can learn, because at the end of the day, learning is how we progress, not just politically, but as a culture,
As a species.
as a group of human beings. Yeah.
Yeah, really. I mean, when people are only following what they've been taught from other people, then at that point they've lost all control of everything that they can possibly do. If you're able to question things, you're able to have some kind of grasp on what's going on at all. In more
Well,
cases.
a lot of the stuff is that we buy into things very, very young. And when we buy into things, we're buying into things around the same time that we believe that there's an Easter bunny
Right.
or that there's a Santa
Santa
Claus.
Claus.
Yeah, so if you really are a 4-year-old and you believe that Santa Claus is coming down the chimney and bringing you gifts, there's wonder in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But why wouldn't you believe that, like, some guy turned empty buckets into buckets of shrimp?
Right.
Or water into wine. Why wouldn't you believe that?
Or the
You
bread.
already bought the Easter bunny, the Tooth Fairy, and the Santa Claus package. Why wouldn't you believe that?
Exactly.
So I actually saw an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson where he said that when his daughter asks about Santa Claus, he goes, "Well, do you believe there's a Santa Claus? And if so, why?" So he's not He's not like a 5-year-old daughter.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, so his 5-year-old daughter is like,
She's like,
has
huh?
to give, like,
I don't want to.
stand in front of the class and give like a verbal dissertation on why she believes that there's Santa Claus. But there's nothing wrong with that.
Because I
And
want gifts. All right.
obviously everybody
Shit,
teaches
I'd buy him a gift if they said that.
everybody teaches differently. Everybody learns differently. There's the saying, there's not only one way to skin a cat. But stuff like that's good. It makes you question things.
Exactly.
Question is how you learn things. I mean, a story that I like to tell is when I was in like middle school, I asked a very stupid question, a question I already knew the answer to, but I wanted to be, the loudest person in the class. So I asked this question. I was like, well, if the sun is up throughout the whole entire day, why does it suddenly get darker sometimes in the middle of the day? And if I would have really thought about that, I would have known, well, sometimes clouds cover the sun.
Clouds, yeah.
That is remedial shit. Like, I should have known that. But it was a lot easier to make my presence known in class at that time. Well, I didn't learn anything as far as why it suddenly gets darker for a few minutes. But what I did learn was, well, next time do your own, shut your mouth before you speak long enough to answer your own question. And if you then can't answer the question, then you ask. So, people learn differently. I was humiliated, and I vowed to never be humiliated again. So that's not to say that I haven't been wrong again in the past, but I've been a lot less rapid fire as far as, blurting things out because of that.
Yep, I try not to, but we're all human and it still happens. Like the other day I was getting into some heated arguments throughout the morning. Right when I woke up to like all these crazy comments about stupid shit, and then somebody asked a legitimate question and I was like, "Are you projecting?" Like, I was like really angry, so I was just like, and she's like, "No, I just want to know this," and I was like, "Oh, my bad." I was like, "I apologize."
And that's the thing. I mean, we all have something that we're really, really gung-ho about. I mean, for me, and most of the stuff that we're really gung-ho about isn't really something that you could quantify anyways. But we do have emotional attachments to things. I mean, my emotional attachment, I mean, I think I had somebody the other day tell me that the Monkees were better than the Beatles. Well, there's no way to say that the Monkees are better than the Beatles, and there's no way to say that the Beatles are better than the Monkees. But I was emotionally involved in that conversation.
Right.
Like, you shut your dirty whore mouth. Yeah?
That's so funny. That's how I am about video games, though. Like, definitely.
Exactly. But it's always in things that are like you can't quantify.
Right.
I mean, to him, clearly the Monkees were better than the Beatles. And to me, it was like a charlatan. Like
You're lying.
yeah, like back in the day when people were like, the
You
Earth.
know you're lying.
Yeah, when in like the 1400s, 1500s, people were like the Earth is round or the Earth orbits the sun, and people were like, "You're a crazy son of a
They're like,
bitch."
what? You
That was how I
psycho.
was. Like, the monkeys are better. Like, have you been to a therapist? Like,
How can you
are
say
you monitored?
that? Are
For
you
me, I felt
trolling me in real life?
I felt like there should have been like a toll-free number to call to get him on some sort of watch list. Like, hey, I'm not saying this guy's a terrorist, but he likes the monkeys more than the Beatles. We need to start watching this
We
guy.
gotta take a look at this guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing. People need to be open to conversation, especially about the things that you're passionate about. Because then that way, if people are open to conversation, then you learn ways of articulating what you're passionate about. For example, I'm very, very passionate about the sciences. I'm very passionate about the sciences because it's what I, grew up doing. It's something that I enjoy. But every single time that I get into an argument that I'm open-minded, I actually learn from it. And the reason I learn from it is because I learn different ways to present that argument, different ways to convey my standpoint. And that's very, very important because the only thing that does more than a good argument is the damage that a bad argument does.
Right.
If you have a bad argument, you're going to damage your cause a hell of a lot more than you're going to benefit your cause even with a good argument.
And pointing out that bad argument will help put that bad cause to shame.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that us as in the scientific community need to do is that we can't
Pull
just
out the
be
bad
happy.
argument, expose it, show it for what it is, and then let people see it.
Yeah, but also we can't just be happy that people are sharing memes.
Right. We have to get involved with the bad arguments. Point out why
Exactly,
they're bad.
exactly, because people are conveying things in a way that they're not entirely sure. So they're just presenting these memes and taking it as gospel truth.
Right.
And that's every bit as bad as the person who shares, the religious stuff with, without any backing to it, or even what it means to them. I think religion is very important because, again, you can't quantify what it means to you. But also, telling people to blindly follow is not the way to go about it. Explain to people why you do follow. Have your own good arguments. Say, hey, this is why I believe. I understand that why I believe isn't going to be why you believe, but maybe why I believe is going to be a reason why you are at least open-minded to it. And I think science also needs to go down that path. We can't just say, hey, if you think that vaccines cause autism, you're an idiot. Well, let's present it in a way that says, hey, I understand that you believe that. Well, why do you believe that? And then let me explain to you why I don't believe that.
It's just it's hard sometimes once they start just throwing articles out and then they refuse to read what you're typing, and then you're just like, ah.
Well, an
So
open-minded
terrible.
a person who is an open-minded you're not going to win anything, arguing with them.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It's terrible. People always ask me though, like, why do you get involved with so many arguments on your page? Why do you question people, and why do you do this? Why do you do that? And it's like, because I'm learning. Every time that I do something like that, I learn something, and if it's not me learning something, people who are watching learn something. People who are reading the argument as it goes out and as it plays out, even if I'm wrong, they're learning something.
right, and I mean, and like even for me, like before we actually came live, you were teaching me stuff about video games. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not gonna get off of this and go play video games. But since I'm passionately curious, I digested information that I was formerly unaware of.
Right.
And
And it's a cool feeling.
Yeah, and maybe one day I will, play a video game and go like, this is what Preston was talking about. Shit, I didn't even know what RPG meant until an hour ago?
Right. Yeah, they'll add RPG elements, but RPG itself is a special genre that not everybody can like.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, I'm not really going to play video games, but at least not now. But I'll be honest with you, if that God of War game comes out, I'll play that.
That'd
Or
be
if
a
they
cool
ever
game.
release like another Metroid game or Mega Man X game, I'd play another Mega Man X game.
They just released a Mega Man game. It's called Just X, I think.
So
Or no. It's called number 9, which it's going back to the classic, but it's also a new style of Mega Man.
All right.
It's a
Well,
strange way to
I
the way I
played
saw it explained. It was really strange.
I played Mega Man X2 back when I was really young. I was jumping on a
I think
trampoline
this
with
is
my
more like X than anything.
Okay, so I was playing Mega Man X2 because I was jumping on a trampoline with my next door neighbor and it was wet and everybody told us not to jump on the trampoline, but we did. So he slipped off the trampoline and busted his head open and had to go get stitches. And like everybody else was like really concerned. Like my aunt had to get involved
It's funny.
and like he was going into shock and like his mom was like, "Hey, pull through this and we're gonna rent you a video game." And all I
It's like,
remember thinking
hey.
about, yeah, all I remember thinking about that stuff is like, why is everybody bummed out? This is great news. We're getting a video game later on. So we ended up getting Mega Man X2, and I think that I had a Super Nintendo at the time,
Yep,
and
that's what that was
I
on.
ended up playing all three Mega Man X games, Mega Man X1, 2, and 3, all because this poor schlub busted his head open. And yeah, I mean, like, it was a
Those are great
scary
fucking
moment.
games.
Oh, it was a great game. I mean, still to this day, I'm sure it's great.
Oh yeah.
When I was younger, they had like these things called emulators. I don't know if they still have that, but
Yeah, I have them on PCs, on the phones now. Even you could play any game on your phone,
that's awesome.
especially the SNES games. There's a full
What
emulator just for that.
what a time to be alive.
Yeah, really. It's ridiculous. I was just going through today at GameStop buying a game for DS, and I was like, I could get the emulator on my phone, but it's just not the same.
Oh, I'm sure
Just
not.
not.
I mean, especially for like nostalgic purposes. Nostalgia is important.
Yeah, it really is.
It
Like this
is.
Pokemon Go thing. The main thing about Pokemon Go that's keeping so many people interested is the nostalgia, is remembering knowing these Pokemon and remembering the bond that you've had to these Pokemon in so many games. That now 20 years later, I was 6 years old when it came out 20 years ago, and I was so heavy into Pokemon. I think six of the games that came out for
Oh, wow.
Pokemon, and I beat each of them, like getting Pokemon to level 100, maxing them out, and all that stuff. And then I even had the trading card game. I played with people in my school, and now 20 years later, I'm just like, holy shit! I had just purchased Pokemon for my DS a few months ago, and I've been playing that. And then I found out about Pokemon Go, and was like, "What? On my phone?" And then now fucking millions of people have it, and it's just a worldwide phenomenon. Where just once again, video game developers have pushed technology to a new limit that's never before been thought of and
Yeah.
just completely changed the world. Like from this moment on, there are going to be many more types of games with this technology and more.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's as
Think of the
we.
safety technology that's going to come from this game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And cars detecting and phones detecting when cars are coming. I'm sure it's going to come.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure Stephen Hawking wouldn't be a big fan of that, but but definitely, I mean, for sure. I mean, I wanted to play the game, but I'll be honest with you, when it started getting popular, I had a show like 4 days later, and I just decided to start performing with the band for the first time, like 3 days before the show. And we were rehearsing, and I just never got it because I was trying to stay super focused. And I was doing this blindfold trick where I was playing a bunch of different instruments and switching back and forth between the instruments, but having to know where everything is and where to put my fingers and at the right time, all while blindfolded, so I couldn't see anything. So I missed like the first 5 or 6 days of the Pokemon Go craze
Yeah.
and just never caught on because of that. Which, if I wasn't rehearsing for a show, you bet your ass I would have had Pokemon Go just like everybody else.
Yeah, it's pretty
Just 'cause
crazy.
again, because of nostalgia.
And what's cool about going and traveling for music and stuff like that is that you're going to come across different Pokemon in different environments. Say, I saw somebody post online, they live in Pakistan, and they're getting mostly sand Pokemon. That's their common. Whereas here in New York, my most common is Pidgey and Zubat. They're getting fucking
That
the
makes
sand
sense, though.
Pokemon. Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm getting Rattata, which is a rat. It
That
makes sense
also
for New
makes a
York
lot of
City.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but in Pakistan, they're getting specific sand Pokemon as often as I get these Pokemon, and I'm just like, that's crazy. That's fucking insane.
I'm actually really excited to go back to New York City. Um,
Crazy.
I went to New York City a few years ago, and there's I don't want to call him a local rapper because at this point he's a lot more than that. But there's a guy named Lewis Logic, who was really really
Does he
popular in
go
New
by
York.
just Logic?
Now he goes by now. This guy's been around since like '99.
So I
And
think I've heard of him. Yeah.
he went by Lewis Logic, and he's incredible, absolutely phenomenal. But he took me on like this pizza tour, and I had artichoke. Have you had artichoke?
No.
Oh, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It's in Manhattan. After my first bite, my dick hit my chin. Like it was that good. And I really just want to go back and just keep eating artichoke. I mean, I'm like 6'3", a buck 80. I could put on 40 pounds of artichoke pizza and still look like a very, very like normal human being. So I'm really excited to go back to New York primarily for artichoke pizza.
The pizza here is just phenomenal overall.
Pizza's so good.
Well, here I
I
think there's something with the way the water is filtered throughout the city that it affects the dough. I think that is the science behind it. I can't remember where I read that.
Well, Connecticut also has really good pizza too. There's Sally's and I can't remember the other name, but it's in New Haven. Phenomenal pizza. I really just want to go and eat places, eat
Yeah.
everywhere.
I'm
Like
looking to
I
do
don't
that
want to go to
next year.
Pakistan. Yeah, I don't want to go to Pakistan for like sand Pokemon. I want to go to Pakistan for whatever they eat in Pakistan.
Right on. Yeah, just pick up the Pokemon on the way though.
I mean, like if I could like grill Pokemon, that'd be cool. Like
I'm
for like
looking to
160
do
Pokemon.
traveling next year, and I'll probably be doing this show on the road, doing things like that.
I think I'm going to Japan later on this year, which will be an interesting
That'd be
experience for
cool.
me.
Oh yeah.
And I go between LA and Vegas a lot, but as somebody who his heart's in Philadelphia, there's a romance that is missing uh as far as the difference between the West Coast and the East Coast is. And I mean really that just boils down to bias. I mean,
Mhm.
people write songs about California all day long, so I'm sure
Yeah.
they find a specific romance in California. But for me, I find,
Brotherly
Boston,
love.
Philadelphia, yeah, New York City, Connecticut, stuff like that. I find those to be romantic cities.
See, I want to find out my bias because I want to be able to travel, see other places, and then decide, hey, I really prefer this because if I've never been there, I can't say I prefer it.
Well, you should definitely come to Vegas if you haven't been here.
Yeah, I'm gonna be going across America next year, saving
Oh,
up all
cool.
this year. Oh yeah,
I'll take you to some cool spots. We're like the
for
culinary
sure.
capital of the West Coast, just because all of these chefs are, getting big money from these casinos and opening up
I went
their
gambling for the
locations.
first time a few weeks ago, actually.
Oh, I can't do it. I have an addictive personality, so if I was to
Oh,
gamble,
dude, I was sitting there. I was like, "Come on, mom, let's keep going."
Were you in Atlantic City or where were
I
you?
was at a Hard Rock Cafe or a Hard Rock Casino in Tampa.
Oh, okay.
I was
Oh,
there with
okay.
my mom, and because she just wanted to show me or whatever. I had never gone gambling, and I sat there. I was like, "Come on, let's keep going. Come on, let's keep going."
Oh, it's bad, dude. Like you're gonna end up losing your shirt.
Yeah, I mean, we
Um,
did pretty well a few times, but then that's what keeps you going. This keeps you wanting to
yeah.
keep going.
I mean, I'm sure it's like the equivalent of like what is that saying, chasing the magic dragon or something, like somebody who does heroin. They keep doing it because they want to get that initial high.
Right.
I'm sure gambling's a lot like that. Like, hey,
It becomes
I
that
want
way,
to
yeah.
win like I used to win.
Like I did that one time. That one time.
People got to understand. I mean, you want to talk about why science is important. You got to start, considering statistical probability here. Like those games are not designed for you to win.
No, they're designed to make a lot of money.
Yeah, simple
They make a lot
mathematics.
of money. Even with the payout, they make a lot of money.
Oh yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
this shit's crazy. All right, so I
Ugh,
think we'll wrap up for tonight. We'll probably have you on for another episode in the
cool, man. I
future.
appreciate you having me.
Thank you for coming on. Everybody, thank you for watching. This has been Preston with That Atheist Show with Greg. Greg, Greg Michael Davis. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, it works for me.
All right. Greg
Thanks for
Michael
having me,
Davis,
man.
everybody. Check out his music. Go back to the intro if you want a little preview. Everybody have a good night, and I will see you probably in a few weeks.
All right,
Bye.
toodles.